Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. What are some dark facts about specific animals that make them not seem as cute anymore? Not safe for work? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. A job I used to work at, my boss had a heart attack in his office and died in the middle of the shift. The office lights were motion activated, so we thought he left to go do something as it was dark. I went into the office to get a new radio, and there he was, leaned back in his chair with his eyes wide open. Scariest thing I've ever seen. Saw an old man slip and die at a bus stop in Portland early in the morning when I was a teenager. That was sad, but what really shook me was the way he was picked up by the ambulance. The sidewalk was washed off and they left. Within 15 minutes, people were occupying that space waiting for a bus, and it was like it had never happened. 15 years old, driving home from work with my mom late at night, saw emergency lights ahead and were eager to see what was going on. It ended up being 3 of my friends killed on impact in a single vehicle car accident. My mom had just went through that intersection 10 minutes earlier on her way to get me. We stayed there for several hours and watched their cell phones light up in the wreckage before they pulled the car apart to get the bodies out. When I was 9 or 10, I was in Florida, and we went to the arcade pizza joint. Went to the bathroom and saw on a stall wall a boy's name, and it said he was here. Fast forward some time and I'm back in Indiana sitting in front of the TV as a kid and watching Unsolved Mysteries. They begin to talk about an abducted boy who the only clue they had was that bathroom stall and his name written in it. Gave me chills, and then nightmares for weeks when I saw his name carved out in the stall. I saw a semi-truck start barreling down the grass median on an interstate highway in Florida, which at first struck me as funny, until they started driving into oncoming traffic. We were in a Jeep, so we drove way off the side of the highway in the grass just as the truck hit a Toyota in front of us, and then slammed into one of the pilings on an overpass. The truck driver died instantly. I tried to work the other guy free, but was pinned in tight, and he died within a couple of minutes. They probably slept through the whole thing. The Toyota had 4 college students driving home for Thanksgiving. I went to check on them after the trucker died. It looked like the driver swerved away, so the truck hit its side, immediately killing him and the passenger behind him. The other 2 didn't appear to be hurt but were in shock. My friend and I kept the other 2 talking until the EMTs arrived. I saw a person fall out of the back of a pickup going 65 miles per hour. He hit the ground and rolled, then stood up. His baseball cap did not fall off. The truck he was in did not stop. I almost ran over him as he fell into my lane. It was clear he was in a little shock, so I walked him over to the side of the road and called 911. He had a mild case of road rash. It was summer, so short sleeves. I can't imagine what happened when the people got to their house and someone said, "Where's Bill?" When I was a kid, probably around 10, I lived in a very seedy apartment complex in San Bernardino. One evening, I witnessed this dude get shot up by the mailboxes. That was scary. On another occasion, some kids who stole my bike threw a giant boulder through our window as we were watching TV. That was probably the scariest thing that happened to me directly. They did it as revenge, following me directing the cops to the bike and having them retrieve it. Just this past Saturday, I hit the local bar to get some carryout and a growler. I saw a friend outside and chatted for maybe 3 minutes when another guy took a step, tripped, and face-planted hard into the stepped area of concrete. In the blink of an eye, this guy was within minutes of dying. He began convulsing and vomiting uncontrollably, could not speak, and was bleeding profusely from his head, nose, and ears. He hit so hard that his nose was shattered and his skull split open across his forehead. EMTs were stunned and got him out of there as fast as possible. The bartender came out and washed more blood and vomit than I've ever seen from the pavement with buckets of hot bleach water. The scariest part was the speed at which this happened. People were standing so close to this guy, but he went down so fast and hard that there wasn't time to react and catch him. The violence of the impact was shocking. Healthcare provider here. Was in my second year of school and was on clinical rounds for the summer. Next to last day, had visited a cancer patient who wanted to leave AMA, against medical advice, to go home, see his cat again, and die in peace. No problem, homie. I literally want you to go see your cat. Continued rounds until we heard a code called. Rushed back to find the guy's tumor in his lung had ruptured, and he was literally spewing blood on his bed and the floor as I walked into the room. went unresponsive, and watched them do like 10 minutes of CPR before calling it. Definitely had never watched someone die before that. In late May 2013, I was going to visit my aunt and uncle who lived in Moore, Oklahoma, and I got there around the 18th. 2 days later, a tornado warning was sent out, and we saw the clouds get darker as time went on, and then I saw a blockage of cloud touch the ground. I watched as that thing grew and came towards town, with the sirens blaring all around. It was simultaneously the most horrifying yet beautiful thing I had and still have ever seen in my entire life. I stood there for about a minute before I got pulled away and brought down to the storm cellar. When we came back up, all that was left was foundation. I was with my mom at McDonald's. I was about 8 years old. We had just pulled up in the parking lot. A man came out dragging his son by the collar. The kid was about 13 or 14 years old. He was also crying. The man grabbed the boy by the throat and slammed his head against the wall. I distinctly remember the boys choked off screaming. The man pinned him against the wall and hit him with a closed fist. My mom immediately called 911 and stepped out of the car to yell at the man, telling him to stop. He called her a bitch and told her to mind her own business. The cops came quickly. They interviewed me and my mom and the boy and his father. Then they let the man go home with his boy. The cops said they didn't see anything, so they couldn't prove anything. I remember being frantic, terrified. I begged them to stop the man from driving away. They ignored me, got in their car, and left. It was the most scared I'd ever been up until that moment, watching the cops drive away and the black pickup with the dad and his son drive away as well. I will never forget that kid or how scared I was seeing him hurt, then seeing people just let him get hurt more. Me and my friends were climbing up and jumping off of a partially collapsed dam. The side with deep water was probably a 15-foot drop, and you had to climb up the slick concrete to jump off again. The left half of the dam was whole, and you could walk along the top. The right half was collapsed and had about an inch of water over it. The collapsed part was rubble with rebar and all kinds of sharp metal sticking out. I was climbing on the corner, partially over water, partially over the collapsed part, when I slipped about 1 foot from the top. One of my friends on top grabbed the back of my life jacket at the last second and held me. For a few seconds, I was fully suspended over a 60-foot drop with bad shit at the bottom. I managed to get a hold of the dam wall again and climb back up. I owe that guy my life. When I was 15, my mom suddenly ended up in the hospital. Long story short, she needed immediate heart valve surgery or she was going to die. I will never forget saying goodbye to her and holding her for what felt like seconds and decades, and then watching my little brother hug her goodbye too. He didn't understand. We had just told him he was adopted 2 weeks prior, and all he knew was the only person who had ever been a mom to him was about to die. My family all hugged her and waited in the waiting room. 8 hours later, the ER doctor came out and said she flatlined 3 times, but she lived. She was told then she had 6 months to live and was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease that I was then diagnosed with following. That was 9 years ago. No matter what happens in the future, I will thank God, the heavens, or whoever is responsible for giving me the extra time with my mom. She's still going today, and very well, but that was rough. When I was 14, I cleaned rooms at this cheap motel that was used mostly for prostitution and partying or doing drugs. I saw many disturbing things, such as a crack pipe left in the room with baby diapers nearby, but the thing that haunts me the most was going into a room to clean, and the person who stayed there had committed suicide by slicing open their own neck and bleeding out. I quit that day. I was in 6th grade at the time, so the bell rang and I was going home to eat, and I saw some guy fighting this other guy. They were classmates. He grazed him below the eye, and while he was getting ready to throw another punch, I saw something shiny in his hand. Apparently it was a knife, and the guy that was punched was stabbed 18 times, I believe in the back, and cut below his eye. Didn't lose his vision. After this happened, the teachers rushed him in the hospital. The blood on his clothes was quite visible. Me, a 25-year-old tram driver, once almost hit a group of teenagers who ignored all warning signs, causing me to hit the emergency brakes and injure 4 of the passengers in my tram who fell to the floor due to the sudden stop of the tram. Also, I was traumatized for 2 weeks and needed to take off work to go to therapy. I swear in that moment, I saw these kids. I just hit the brakes, closed my eyes, and prayed I don't feel an impact. That was by far the scariest thing in my life so far. I haven't had the most adventurous life, but I remember one time when we were camping, my family was hiking around on this big rock and it started getting cloudy. My dad and siblings climbed up to the top of the rock, but my mom and I decided it was too steep for us. My dad reached up into the air and said he could feel static on his fingers. My little sister's hair started standing up a little, and my dad was just standing there with my brother laughing at the staticky feeling he got when he reached up. My mom and I tried to convince him to come down, but he wouldn't. Eventually, he ended up getting down and no one was hurt, but I was terrified watching my little sister's hair stand up and my dad not do anything about it. He's a good dad, but sometimes he can be a moron. He didn't think the situation was that serious, even with my mom and I freaking out. I was working at a chemical plant and saw a guy in a fork truck make a turn too fast. He wasn't wearing his seatbelt and the top of the cage landed on his head. I froze for a moment, it was so horrifying. I then ran over and killed the ignition. Some other workers came and we lifted the cage up high enough to pull him out, but it was obviously too late. I can still hold his blood running down a nearby drain.